Hi and welcome back to the channel. Today I want to talk about coronavirus and there's a few things I want to cover in this video. I really want to start off with, as you know, both me and Ollie took the decision to stay in China when coronavirus first started to spread in China. And we heard some news from Wuhan, and we made the decision to stay here. And I think in hindsight, and I think Ollie's already made a video about this, but this was one of the better decisions that I think we made. You know, China are a big country. There's 1.4 billion people. However, they've done an extremely good job in controlling coronavirus. You know, unless you live here, you can't understand the size and scale of the country. And, you know, apart from the initial 2 or 3 months lockdown, pretty much life has not been that different since the end of that initial lockdown. And even here in Shenzhen, where we live, the lockdown wasn't really that severe. We were able to go out, we were able to sort of wander, you know, go wherever we want to, as long as we wore masks. And you still have to wear masks on public transport. And I don't know whether that's mandated. I think it probably is. However, the people do that anyway. And I think this is a big difference between sort of China and Asian countries and Western countries, where people have trust in their government here, so they follow the advice of the government and they do what the government asks them to do. And I think that contributes a lot to keeping COVID under control. If the government here say wear a mask, then people will wear a mask. If the government here ask people to get vaccinated, a majority of people will go and get vaccinated. In fact, China have done an incredible job at vaccinating the people here. I think up to now they've sort of administered somewhere between 1.7 and 1.8 billion doses of vaccine. That is just a staggering number. You know, a lot of countries said, oh, they were very slow at the start and it would take them years. But literally, I think at one point they were vaccinating about 20 or 30 million people per day. And as a foreigner, I've had my vaccine, I've had both shots. I went to my local hospital. I don't have social insurance here, so I had to pay, but it was super cheap. It was literally 100 RMB per shot, which is about £11 or $15. It was really simple to do. Just fill out the form, register. Actually, you can register online, but I wasn't aware of that, and the staff at the hospital helped me do that. It was very simple, very easy. I got it done, and now I've got a nice gold sort of square around my health code on my phone, so that really helps when I'm traveling around. And this is something that's sort of being used countrywide. We have these health codes on our phone which go sort of green for all clear, amber for if you've been to a medium risk area, and red if you've been to a high risk area. And this is used by people all over China, and it allows the movement of people around China. Now, if you're coming from a medium or a high risk area and you're going to another area, it normally means you have to have a COVID test taken. But again, that's very quick to do, it's very cheap to do, £6 or £7, $8 or $10, no hassle whatsoever. And in fact, as you can see from our videos, me and Ollie have travelled pretty extensively around China since the end of the sort of initial 2 or 3 month lockdown. And that contrasts massively with countries like the UK, where they've been in lockdown for, a year, and quite a strict lockdown for a year, whereas here, most people have been able to travel around and that. Now, I will say the UK have also done a really good job with vaccines, and it seems they are getting coronavirus under control. But if you look at the US, I mean, recently they've had like 100,000 cases a day. The hospitals are struggling again. And that's simply because there's a lot of people in the States who just refuse to have the vaccination, or they won't wear masks. I have a friend in the USA, and his kind of words to me is that, well, people just really don't care here. And I think, this will also contribute to the virus mutating. So, because of these issues in these countries, it will take longer on a global basis to get rid of coronavirus, because we only need to get a strain of coronavirus in one of these countries where they're just letting it spread that's immune to the vaccine. We're almost back to square one, and that's a really, really bad thing. As well as vaccinating as well as vaccinating all their population, China, they've also contributed and distributed around the rest of the world more vaccines than all the other countries put together. And that's just an incredible thing. And yet, it's crazy that certain countries, especially the USA, are finger pointing to China and saying it's their fault, where I actually think that you can see how well China have controlled the coronavirus here, and many other countries could have controlled it just as well if they'd have followed the science and the people in those countries that have listened to the science. Instead, it became really, really political. I do feel that Western nations have made coronavirus very, very political. I think that's very, very sad. I think that's stupid. I think there should be a consensus of all the countries in the world to work together to eradicate coronavirus, and also work together to find the origin instead of all this finger pointing. There's a lot of finger pointing at China saying the virus originated here, but more recently a lot of evidence has come to light to suggest that the virus was circulating in other parts of the world well before it was first discovered in China. And one of these examples is the Wuhan Games, which took place in October of 2019, I believe. Now, the Wuhan Military Games was attended by many thousands of athletes from hundreds of countries, and many of those developed COVID-like symptoms and were ill. Yet nobody has ever looked into this. None of these athletes have ever been tested. None of them have ever been questioned. Was the Wuhan Games a super spreader event? Did somebody from one of the countries attending those Wuhan Games bring coronavirus to Wuhan? And was that a super spreader event which caused coronavirus to spread around all those people, and also to people of Wuhan? Now, I'm not saying that's the case. It may be, it may not be, but it's a theory that needs looking into. And I note that there's a number of US lawmakers now asking for an investigation into this. I find it very, very strange that America want to find the origin of COVID-19, yet they refuse to sort of look at anything that might implicate themselves. They want transparency in tracing the origins of coronavirus, but so we should explore all possible avenues. So it's very possible that event in Wuhan was an event that spread coronavirus, and that happened earlier than it was first detected in China. And another thing on top of that, coronavirus has been found to be circulating in Italy much earlier than it was discovered in China. So the research in Italy showed that people had tested positive for COVID antibodies in October, which means that they would have had COVID in September 2019, which was way before the first cases were discovered in China. And there's one particular area of Italy, Lombardy, where the authorities saw a much higher rate of pneumonia at that time, which they now think may have also been COVID. So again, if we want to trace the origins of COVID, it's important that we look at all these avenues and not just keep pointing the finger at China. It almost seems as that some of these other countries, the USA in particular, only want to follow any traces that lead to China. They don't want to be transparent with all their own issues. Now, on top of this, we also have the Fort Detrick. This was a biolab that was located in an area. Now that area, right, saw some cases of a respiratory pneumonia in July of last year in a number of old people's homes. But strangely enough, the US authorities won't release the autopsies of those people that died due to that. So is there something they're hiding there? I don't know, maybe not, maybe it has nothing to do with coronavirus, but to rule it out, we really need to look at that. And then there was the vaping disease. That was another one. Now, they put this down to sort of electronic cigarette vaping, but again, it seems very, very strange that this outbreak of vaping was only in the USA, when there's a lot of vaping in Europe and the UK, yet nobody had this vaping respiratory illness in England or Europe, only in the USA. So that's another anomaly that is a bit strange to me. And I think something else is that some of the CT scans of that vaping illness look remarkably like the CT scans of people's lungs from coronavirus. And something else that not many people have talked about is that COVID antibodies have been found in white-tailed deer in the US. Now, this is kind of interesting because there was tests done, and this was actually after the pandemic had started, but there was tests done on white-tailed deer in the US, which is a lot, and they are often found on sort of golf courses and in people's gardens in various parts of the States. And about 30% of the deers that were tested had COVID-2 antibodies, which suggests that the COVID-2 had been circulating amongst those deers at some point in time. And there's a lot of unanswered questions here, and I think there's a lot more research needs to be looked into to determine whether this was one of the causes of coronavirus. Were they an animal reservoir? Can they affect humans? Can it be passed from the deer to humans? Is it something that's passed around wild animals? Can the virus be passed from the deer to other wild animals? Now, a lot more research needs to be done into this, but I think it's research that does need to be done. So that gives you some facts and figures on that I've looked into regarding coronavirus. I'm not pretending to be an expert. I'm just giving you the facts. You can make your own assessments of what you think, but I think it's very, very important that if we really want to find the origin of coronavirus, that we have to look into every avenue and every occurrence of it to either follow it up more or eliminate it. And I think this is really, really important that this needs to be done. Anyway, before I go, I've got something really quite exciting to sort of tell you. Me and Ollie have been invited, I think in September, on a tour of the Olympic venues for the Beijing 2022 Winter Olympics, and we're really pretty excited to go and see those venues. It should be cool, but I really hope we can get some tickets. And in my mind, that I think that the authorities here have really kept the coronavirus under control, and I'm sure that is something they will continue with. So I really believe that there will be no problem with China hosting the 2022 Beijing Olympics. And I'm really looking forward to that. I really hope to be able to get some tickets to go and see some of those events. This does bring me to the end of the video. I will reference any research I used by putting in links in the description of this video. As I do say, I think it's important that the whole world needs to work together in order to find the origin of coronavirus and how it did spread to humans, and that will benefit the whole world because it will help us if ever there's a number of experts says this will happen again, and the more we can learn about it, how it spread to humans in the first place, the more prepared we can be for next time. Anyway, that does wrap it up, and what I say, as I always say, as always, for now, take care.